The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development, with a platform and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives. At The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.
Tanni Grey-Thompson. Tanni was born in Cardiff and she was christened Carrie Stavina, but when her 2-year-old sister Sian first sees her, she nicknamed her Tiny, and very shortly afterwards it became Tanni. Tanni attended a primary school in Cardiff, and her parents from very early years were very supportive and encouraged her independent streak. And after a long battle with the local authority, they were able to secure a place in the mainstream school. Tanni attended a comprehensive school in Penrith, and she discovered her interest in sports. After trying a range of sports, Tanni realized at the age of 13 that wheelchair racing was her sport of choice. In her last year as a junior athlete, she won the junior national title over 100 meters, and at 17, she became part of the British wheelchair racing squad. Tanni has a phenomenal career. Her first Paralympics was in Seoul in 1988, where she won a bronze medal in 400 meters. And in 1992, she claimed victory in London Wheelchair Marathon, the first of 6 wins. Then went on to Barcelona, where she was in the Paralympics, and she won 4 gold medals in the 100, 200, 400 and 800 meters, and a silver in the 4x100 meter relay. It was at the Barcelona event that Tanni became the first women to break the 60 seconds barrier for 400 meters. Tanni won then 800 meter gold in 1996 Atlanta Paralympics, along with 3 silver medals in the 100, 200 and 400 meters. In Sydney 2000, Tanni returned again, and she won 4 gold medals in 100, 200, 400 and 800 meters. Her final Paralympic Games as an athlete was in Athens 2004, where she won gold in the 100 and 400, taking her medal tally to a total of 11 golds. Her total Paralympic medal tally is 11 gold, 4 silvers and 1 bronze. And added to the 5 gold, 4 silver and 3 bronze medals at the World Championships, well, obviously it's safe to say she has a phenomenal career. Over her career, basically, she's broke 30 world records on the track, and her personal best, well, there's just many of them. The 100 meters in the Swiss Nationals, the 200 meters in Atlanta in 1996, and so on. This is a phenomenal lady, just powerful. And obviously, this interview for me was just great, because obviously to meet someone like her, who then eventually in 2010 became an independent crossbench peer in the House of Lords, taking the title of Baroness Grey-Thompson. She's just a great, inspiring lady that teaches us so many things related to willpower, to fighting the odds, to, being resilient, and to believing that anything and everything is possible in a time where obviously things weren't as easy, and not that they are yet for many people that suffer disabilities. But, she's just a phenomenal lady. So I am absolutely certain 100% you're going to enjoy this interview. It's one to listen, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much.
Hi, welcome. I'm Bernardo Moya. I'm the CEO and publisher of The Best You. And today I have the great pleasure and honour of interviewing Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, who has won 11 Paralympic gold medals and is also the winner of 6 London wheelchair marathons. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. What an honour.
Thank you very much.
Tanni, tell me a little bit about yourself and your early years. What was school like for you, and where were you brought up?
I was brought up in Cardiff in South Wales, and I just went to my local school. And at the age of 7, I became paralysed and had to start using a wheelchair. And I was really lucky in lots of ways, because my father was an architect, and he realised how inaccessible the world was. And he realised very early on that if I was going to be a wheelchair user, I needed to be kind of fit and strong. be able to deal with that. So he very much encouraged me to be physically active and to go into sport, because his idea was that if I needed to go somewhere with loads of stairs and there was no one to help me, I needed to be able to get out of my chair, crawl up the stairs and drag my chair with me. And that really set me on a path to... the other thing my father was very keen on was education. And he used to say to me, education gives you choices. And as a young child, I used to sit and roll my eyes at him and just think, I'm never going to be that old and grumpy. And then you realise actually... 15, 20 years on, that actually your parents are right about quite a lot of things.
Absolutely, you learn that with years. So tell me about those early years. What was school like? I suppose it was obviously challenging and physically, but did you enjoy school? Was there any subjects in particular you liked?
I loved school, and I think it's because of my sort of competitive nature. I kind of wanted to be good at actually everything, but was pretty okay at most subjects. Actually, easy to say, I hated doing languages at school. And then when I became an athlete, probably the most useful thing I learned at school was languages because of how much I travelled. But I think for me, the balance between education and sport was really important in terms of helping me fulfil my dream. So I wanted to be an athlete from a really sort of young child, sort of 8, 9 years old. I knew I wanted to be involved in sport. But also for me, the education mattered, because back then nobody knew anything about the Paralympics, or there was a view if you were disabled, you couldn't possibly be an athlete. So for me, I figured I needed to be good at school because I needed to get a good job to be able to pay for the things that I wanted to do in sport.
So from those early years, you say you had that competitiveness in you. Is that been your drive throughout your life, being competitive?
I'm annoyingly competitive. I will have a competition over anything. And I'm stubborn. And I don't like being told I can't do things. So I think that's part of it. So, I had a few people when I was young who said, people like you can't be sporty. So some of it I wanted to prove it to myself, some of it proving to other people. And some of it to my family, who were amazingly supportive of me, because when I was young, there's quite a lot of discrimination against me because I was in a wheelchair. And my parents protected me from a lot of that. What they did, I think, through sport as well. They realised that the training, the winning, the losing, the planning, it builds up your resilience to deal with lots of other things. So for me, sport gave me an amazing platform to do lots of other things. But
you said from your early years you knew you wanted to get into sports. What did you see yourself doing?
I'm not sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to play sport. Actually really wanted to play basketball, but I was rubbish. I couldn't throw, catch or shoot, or if you spun me around twice, I'd forget which way I was going. So I had all these aspirations actually to play for GB. And I realised, after not very long that wasn't it. But lots of enthusiasm. And I think for me, I tried lots of different sports and then found wheelchair racing. And at the age of 13, and for me, that was life-changing because I loved the individual side, that I was in charge of my own destiny, but I could train with other people. I kind of quite liked the coaching group that I was in. And I could just go off and do the things that I wanted to do. So, every decision from 13 was based around competing for GB. So it dictated, which university I went to. Ultimately dictated who I married. I married a fellow athlete. So it was never a sacrifice. So it was always the most important thing in my life until the end of my career, where I decided I wanted to do other things.
And obviously, as you said, you had to physically train hard, I would expect, from very early years.
From the age of 13, I was training a few times a week, but that quickly built up. So to the point I was training 12 to 15 times a week, 50 weeks of the year. It's not always a very balanced lifestyle as an elite athlete, because it's 7 days a week. You're always thinking not just of your training, but competition planning, chair design, what you eat, how much you sleep. And then I think the point I realised that some of it's not balanced was when actually my husband and I decided to try for a family. And, I wanted to compete in the Commonwealth Games that were in Manchester, England. So I counted back 6 months, I counted back 40 weeks, because that's how long it takes to have a baby. And I said to my husband, this is the date I need to be pregnant by. So we have a daughter that was born actually 6 months before the Commonwealth Games. So, but you make those choices. It was a huge privilege to get to do something I loved so much. And it never felt that I was giving anything up. It always felt that I had this opportunity to do what I wanted.
And in your early years, when you decided to get into sports and Team GB, was there anybody that inspired you, any in particular that stood out and helped you?
I was inspired by my first coach, a guy called Roy Anthony at the local athletics club. And he was amazing. He was a volunteer coach. He gave up so much of his time. And he coached quite a large group of teenage girls. So I don't think at the time we realised how amazing he was, because we're all slightly hormonal and a bit moody. And, we probably offered him lots of challenges. But there was also an athlete called Chris Hallam, a wheelchair athlete. And I remember watching him compete in the London Marathon. And he won. And he wore these really dreadful leopard print lycra suits. And he had sort of dyed, flowing, long blonde hair. And he was sort of quite... in your face, and very, very dynamic, strong personality. And I remember watching Chris win London and saying to my mum, I was 12, and I'd said to my mum, I'm going to do London Marathon one day. And she's like, of course you are, dear. Lovely. Well done. And I don't think she thought I had any idea of what I was letting myself in for. But 6 years later, at 18, I did my first London Marathon.
At the age of 18?
Yeah. But it was, I remember being on the start line and just thinking, wow, this is amazing. I dreamt about it for 6 years and I trained and you're there. And my first London was dreadful. But I remember that excitement still of being on the start line with all these other athletes who are the best in the world. And I wanted to be part of that.
There's so much to ask you, but let's start with the London Marathon. So you started at 18. How many times did you compete?
I did 17 Londons.
17.
So winning 6 out of 17 is maybe not great, but
really,
no, it's
really
pretty good. It's London. It suited me as a course, time of year. There's something special about winning such a big race in your own country. I did well in other big city marathons, but London was the one that I did best in. And you don't actually appreciate what it's like to be fit until you may be retired. But there's nothing quite the same as going through the 26 miles of the streets of London with British fans shouting your name.
Must be amazing. But can I say that 6 times winning, I think, is very, very impressive. You held at different times 30 world records?
Yeah, I held 30 world records. I don't hold any of them anymore. World records are really strange because you know that they're not yours forever. And it's amazing when you break one. Because to know that you're the fastest in the world, but then everyone else who's competing against you is trying to do that. So I remember when after I retired, my first world record went, and you kind of go, oh, okay. And then the second was like, oh, okay, no, there's something that gives you a little bit of freedom, actually, about knowing that the sport hasn't remained static, that, other people are coming through and are doing well. And world records are funny. Gold medals, nobody can take them away from you. That's different. Yours, that's really special.
So tell me about the Olympics. You've competed in a few and you've won 11 gold Paralympic. Tell me what the Olympics, what they represent and what it was to represent your country. And
to compete for your country at that level it's just incredible because it's the peak of anything that you could ever wish to do. So although World Championships, Europeans, other competitions were important, for me, competing at Paralympics was all I wanted to do. I competed at 5. And, when I think about how many friends and colleagues along the way who were all trying to do that, who maybe didn't even get to compete at 1, to then be at 5 was amazing. And I always remember from my first one through to my 4th, always knowing I was going to do another 4 years, that I wanted that moment again, because it's the crowd, it's you have the best in the world who are there. And it's great, huge pressure. And I remember, before each of my finals, being in the sort of warm-up track, about 2 hours before, thinking, what am I doing here? Am I good enough? You ask yourself all those questions. And that's the point where you have to look back at your training and your preparation and know that you've done everything you could. So I like training. Training was good. I mean, it'd be nice to not have to do quite as much of it. But the only way I knew I was going to have a chance of winning was to train 15 times a week, was to do everything in my life to make sure when I was on that start line, I had the best chance. Because You know, after a race at the Paralympic final, you can't say, "Excuse me, can we just do that again, please?" You know, you have 16 seconds, 28 seconds, whatever it is. You have this short space of time to prove that you're good, and you can't go back.
And in particular, I suppose, obviously, kind of as important as your training is your mindset. You must be incredibly strong from a mind point of view.
The mindset is hugely important, because it's about having that confidence to know that even if perhaps training hasn't gone right, that you can pull yourself back around. You know, there's definitely races where I was on the start line where I wasn't the best on the start line. But, you know, having lots of experience, I did a lot of different level races. One thing that I did do was race against the British men a lot. And they used to push me around the road. They used to make my life really hard. But then when I was racing against the best women in the world, I'd been through just about every experience you could imagine. So I remember there was one race where my husband, half marathon, literally pushed me into every curb he could find. He pushed me into every corner. You know, he messed around, tried to drop me out of the back of the pack. And then when you're racing in a race that really matters, if that happens, you've got the skills to deal with it. And I think that was one of my strengths, was knowing that you don't want the major decision in the race to be in the Paralympic final. You need to have had all those skills, and you need to have practiced everything you possibly could in the lead up to it.
If you're interested in finding your true purpose, if you're interested in finding your legacy, if you're interested in growing, if you are sick and tired of reading books that don't help you, haven't helped you, or are not helping you, or attending courses and seminars that haven't really had an impact in your life, I invite you to read my book, The Question, Find Your True Purpose, out now. For more information, go to www.thequestion.co. If you're interested in working with me, contributing to the magazine, maybe speaking at any of our many events around the world, partnering or licensing The Best You, go to www.thebestyou.co.
Yeah, and as yourself, you from a very early age, you were already planning, I'm going to be in the marathon, I'm going to be in the Paralympics. So obviously that mindset and that drive takes you there.
The mindset and the drive is hugely important, to make yourself train every day, actually, because there are some times when, if it's -5 and it's foggy outside and you have to do 20 miles training, you're not there going, yay, I'm a GB athlete, aren't I? Like, you know, and there are moments when you get to train in very nice places around the world, and it's different. But when you're tired and you've got blisters and you're in the middle of a winter training session where it feels forever before you're going to compete again, you have to have something that makes you go out and do the things you don't like doing. You know, not necessarily the things you like doing tend to be the things that you're good at, but you get most improvement from doing the things that you maybe don't like or not so good at doing. And I think that's one of the things that I was good at, was making myself do the hard graft, because you knew that's all pennies in the bank. It all makes a difference for when you come to that start line. So, you know, my Paralympic career, 5 games, 11 goals, is 19 and a half minutes. You know, I didn't have very long to prove myself. So for me, that's why I trained hard, because I knew I had this ultimately limited time to achieve.
That's lovely. Out of all these amazing memories you have, is there anything in particular, any more memorable than others, out of all the wins you've had?
The most memorable victory would be Athens, 100 metres final. And 100 was my weakest event. I used to take about 96 metres to get to my top speed, which was, and it never mattered how much time I practiced my starts. I never seemed to get an awful lot better at that. And I'd come from losing the 800, which was my strongest event. I'd been unbeaten in 12 years over that distance. And that was really tough. And I had 2 days between the 800 final and the 100 final. And for me to come back, to get my head straight, to almost lock away, to push away that 800 metres and not think about it when I was on the start line of the 100. If I could pick one race out of my career, it would be that. And there's an amazing picture that was taken of me at about the 60 metre mark. And there's an Italian athlete called Francesca Porcelato, and she's got a lead on the rest of the pack, and the rest of us are in a straight line. And there's a picture of my husband walking away from the race. And the journalist said to me, "Oh, your husband, he couldn't be bothered to watch you race." And so I won. I saw my husband at the finish line. I said, "Why didn't you watch me race?" And he said, "I knew you'd won. I was coming to meet you. That's possibly the most romantic thing he's ever said. But it's that kind of confidence in the people around you as well. And actually, you know, without the guys around me, without my training partners, without my coaches, they make it happen as well, because you don't do it on your own. You do it with lots of other support.
Out of all the competitions, what I admire about you is how versatile you are and how you've managed from 100 metres to 800 metres or the London Marathon. How is that possible? Why are you so versatile?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm unique, but in wheelchair racing, it's much more, it's closer to cycling than it is to running. So it's about overcoming momentum, not gravity. So every step a runner takes, they're lifting their body against gravity, because you've got the wheels and you've got that forward motion. It's slightly different. So actually a marathon, which, you know, takes an hour and 40 minutes, is much quicker than anybody runs it. It's just a whole series of sprints joined up together. And actually, I was really a sprinter. So, you know, 100 to 800. So for me, with a marathon, as long as I was there with about 20, you know, after 26 miles, I had a good chance of winning. If I got dropped out of the pack early, then there was no chance. So for me, it was just about timing, sitting in the pack and waiting for my moment to come through and to try and win.
You make it sound so easy. What is determination to you? What does it mean? What does determination mean?
Determination is knowing what you want. I think being very honest about where you are now, because you have to know your starting point if you've got a goal, if you're trying to achieve something. And it's about not giving up. It's about doing everything you have to, doing things you like doing things you don't like doing. And there's belief in there as well. You know, if you're determined to reach a goal, there will be points which is really hard and it feels like it's not worth it and you might be going backwards. But you have that belief in yourself that you will get there. And I think probably people who know me, they would be polite if they say I was determined. There's other names I've been called as well, but I think it's that ability to push yourself really hard, to believe that you're doing the right thing.
And would you say that is those are your main assets? I'm sure you've got loads more, but
I think determination, stubbornness, being able to dream, being able to have that sort of high-end goal. I think a lot of young people struggle with that, you know, to know what they want to do. I think those things are incredibly important. And the resilience. In the whole of my career, I lost more races than I won. I just won some big important ones. And people forget the first couple of years I competed, or, you know, those things.
You were first awarded an MB, an OB, and then you're a dame and a baroness now. What did that mean to you? It must have been a very proud moment, I would think.
It is really a proud moment to be recognised by other people. I think for my family, you know, being made a dame, and then, you know, the British system is all a bit strange sometimes. I think to sit in the House of Lords and to be part of politics and Parliament was something my family were hugely proud of. I don't think they ever expected it. But it's one of those things, it was never kind of part of my life's ambition to be made a dame. It's other people then recognise that you've done something really good. And that's lovely, actually. That's really lovely. You know, for me, it was always about winning as many medals as I possibly could, breaking as many world records. And then some of those other things are really icing on the cake, and they're quite special.
So you got a degree in politics and social administration. So this was the education that was very important for your father and to fall back on. So tell me, why did you decide to go down that route?
When I was looking at universities, I wanted to go to Loughborough, which has an amazing reputation for sport and elite athletes. And it was never part of my plan to go into politics. I was looking at degrees. I knew I wanted to do something that was arts-based. Actually really wanted to do history, but they shut the course down just before I went there. And I remember looking through the prospectus and just saying, OK, I'll do politics because it's fairly similar. Did say to my head of department just before I graduated, I am never going to go into politics. Everyone else from my year was going off to work in politics because politics is for losers. And then a few years later, I ended up working in politics. And I kind of had to eat my words on that one. But I think for me, during my time competing, I'd got more interested in disability rights, in athlete welfare, lots of issues around elite sports participation, physical activity, health. And then I had the opportunity to go into politics and fight for some of those things. And actually a lot of skills that I've learned from sport in terms of the resilience, working hard, not giving up, actually transfer really well into politics. You spend a huge amount of time writing speeches that can maybe be 2 minutes long. So you have to have maximum impact in the time that you have. And I love my life now. I'm transitioning out of elite sport is very difficult for an awful lot of people. Nothing will ever be the same as competing in front of 110,000 people. There's a bit of me that I don't want it to be either. I want those memories to be special. But actually, life in politics is quite similar to sport. And it's, I guess, sport's quite selfish. And this is my chance to do something in a different way.
And tell me a little bit more about how you're campaigning, for disability rights. And so what is it you do?
Well, when I went into the House of Lords, I was really there to work on legislation around the Olympic and Paralympic Games. So it was things like Sunday trading, road closures, the physical buildings. And then over time, actually it's a bit like school. You're kind of expected to learn and grow and develop. And it's actually a very nurturing environment where you can ask some of the brightest people in the world their opinion, and they will share it with you because they want to teach and educate. And I never expected that at all when I went there. If maybe you look at it on the Parliament channel, it looks a bit quiet and a bit dull, and there's maybe not as many people in the chamber. And for me, I guess what I want is, now I'm the age I am, I realise how lucky I was in terms of the help, the support, the protection I had. And then you also realise from the huge amount of travelling that I've done that not everybody else has that. And actually what I want is disabled people to have the same opportunity as anybody else, to be in education, to be in work, to have families, and to be integrated into society. So that's a big part of what I do now is fighting for rights for disabled people, because although we're in a pretty good place, and actually, we're... If you look at every other country around the world, we're incredibly fortunate as disabled people, but we still have some way to go.
And I think obviously kind of the transformation or the change you've probably seen from your first Paralympics to Team GB 2012 and how it's evolved, it must have been a massive change from when you started.
The evolution of the Paralympics has been amazing. I mean, Barcelona was great. We had full stadiums, but, there were other games that I was at where you could virtually name the crowd, be like, oh, there's my family and there's such and such's family. And, a big part of actually my decision to retire was because we'd won the right to host 2012 and I had the opportunity to work with the team and do some really exciting things. And you never quite know what's going to happen. We'd put athletes at the heart of the games. Every decision we made was about making it good for athletes, because then it's good for spectators, for sponsors, for media. But one of my proudest moments in my sporting career was going into the athletics venue on day one of the Paralympics, about half an hour before the session started, and looking around, and there were 13 free seats. And those because the people hadn't quite sat in them yet. I remember that point thinking, OK, this was worth it. So I always had, as well as the aspiration for my own career, I always had an aspiration that the Paralympics would be this huge movement that lots of people would want to watch, that sponsorship would be equal, that there'd be really great TV coverage. And we're moving there. 2012 was a massive step forward, but we need to keep a little bit of that pressure on.
Well, you were definitely part of that inspiration and inspired a lot of Paralympics, I'm sure. Absolutely, no doubt.
I kind of hope that, that people kind of have looked at my career and think, well, do you know what, if she can do it, I can do it. There's... One of the nice things, actually, about being in sport is you get letters from time to time from people who say, I'm doing wheelchair racing because of you, or I'm doing sport because of you. And that makes the things that I do now really worth it. I've also had someone write and tell me that they've named their cat after me, which is also quite sweet in a weird sort of way.
That's nice.
Yeah.
If you're interested in watching the video content of this interview and many others, or interested in learning from world leaders and teachers, go to www.thebestU.online.
I know you've spoken recently about Generation Inactive and about talking about maybe the lack of discipline in society and parents. And tell me a little bit about that and what your thoughts are.
Well, gradually over time, I've sort of started looking much more at physical activity. as opposed to elite sport, and how we engage actually everybody in being more active. I have a teenage daughter now, so I'm very keen that she has an active lifestyle and she has a healthy lifestyle. And what we found out with Generation Inactive is that, you know, the generation of pupils that we have in primary schools at the moment, you know, up to the age of 11, are the most inactive that they've ever been. And that is a worry for lots of reasons. It's a worry for elite sport because we're not going to get children making those stepping stones. But it's also a massive worry for the cost to society and the NHS. You know, it's not sustainable if we don't encourage people to be active. But it's not just schools, you know, it's actually women. We have a real issue with 80% of women aren't fit enough to be healthy. Might be because they've had a bad experience in school, you know, might be their mums, they're working. You know, we have an older generation that is costing the NHS quite a lot of money, that we need to think differently about how we encourage people to be active. So it's got to be fun, it's got to be enjoyable, and people have to take responsibility from themselves, that we need to think about prevention rather than cure. And at the moment, I think we could spend more money on prevention and just do things a bit differently.
Mm. Do you feel that people give up too quickly? They expect immediate, quick results? And
I think it can be hard, especially for women. You look at a lot of, you know, women's magazines or just the media and the perception of what is an attractive woman. You know, as soon as you start hitting the summer months, you have all these discussions about whether you're beach ready. There's been work done on with young girls asking them would they rather be thin or healthy. Most young girls would say thin. And some of that is hard to change because, you know, the world is different from when I was young. But we need to do a lot more to encourage people to think about their own health, their own lives. And I guess, you know, some of it comes back to my father's attitude with me was that, you know, that I had to be strong and fit and healthy to live a normal and a fulfilled life. And that's kind of what I'd like to see for a younger generation. But we have to make... It's not just about PE and physical activity in school. It's about a whole school day. It's about how we live our whole lives. I don't want to be prescriptive and tell people what to do, but I'd like people to think about, you know, how they can be productive. If you're fit and healthy, you'll be more productive at work. You'll be more able to play with your grandchildren. You'll live a longer life into retirement.
Exactly.
You know, it's not rocket science, but there's a lot of things we have to change to make that happen.
What's your attitude towards learning?
My attitude towards learning, I think it's quite positive and it's quite open. You know, as an athlete, you're always having to look at different ways to improve. I love learning. I love finding out new things. I think I'm quite inquisitive. There's a whole debate about how coachable I am. Now, my husband, who was my coach for a while, would say I was uncoachable. I would say it's more about how you coach me. And I think that's something that you learn as an athlete is how to be coached. And that's when I've had really good relationships with coaches, is when we both understood. I don't always see that in business. You know, it's how you help and guide and how open-minded you are. And I guess one of my frustrations is when I see people whose minds are closed, because actually you can learn something new every day. It might be huge, it might be small, but I think you can do something every day to be better than you were the day before. But it's how open-minded you are about that.
And do you think that's part of your success, is how open-minded you've been and how prepared you are to put in the time?
I think a big part of my success is wanting to find out more, wanting to speak to the best coaches, the best athletes, the best scientists, the best chair designers, and trying things, not being afraid to try, but also being quite scientifically based on whether there's an improvement or not, and making some judgments about whether the decisions I've made have made me better. So I think that has been a huge part of my success. And I think as part of my success now is that, you know, you're not going to know the answers to everything. Actually, a lot of things that I do, you know, I might not be the expert, but I know lots of people who are. And it's about making those connections and joining those people up. And it's about learning something every day.
That's great, thank you. So what would you like to teach others in the future?
I would like to teach people that, you know, you can do a lot of amazing things in your life. You have to be open-minded, you have to be resilient, but you have to have a goal and a dream. And I think sometimes with young people, we shut off goals and dreams. And sometimes people don't want to say the things they want to achieve in their lives in case people laugh at them or think they're stupid or will say, well, you'll never do that. And it's about giving people the freedom to think about the opportunities that they have and to grasp the opportunities that they have around them. I think that's something else that I've been good at is seeing opportunities and having a go. And, okay, losing a race is not great, but not being afraid to fail, because you actually learn so much from the races that you don't win. You learn a lot from when you do win, but it's about learning all the time. And what I see in young people and people in business is they're worried about failing. They're worried about what other people think of them. They're worried about being judged. And it's about being able to have that confidence in your own ability to explain why you're trying something new and to learn from it and to accept that maybe things didn't work out and, you're going to do it differently next time.
Yeah, and I think because of the business that we're in, we see more and more that people have dreams, but, they decide maybe later in life that, yeah, why not? Let's go for it. And I think also there's that attitude towards the middle-aged people that a lot of them should also think and have big dreams. It's never too late.
I think when you're building a career and, sometimes you're in the grind of day-to-day work and, my work-life balance is quite variable. Sometimes it's much better than others. And I think it's really hard. I don't know anybody who's not really busy, who doesn't have a to-do list that just seems to get longer and longer every day and you scrub a few things off from time to time. And it's having that time to evaluate where you are. And I think that's what I learned from being an athlete was that you need that time. I make sure I have time at least every week to stop and look at where I am and where I'm going. And am I going the right direction? Because it's much easier to change it 6 months from your end goal than it is from 2 weeks. So I'm really protective of having that time in my diary so I know whether I'm achieving the things that I want to. And I think it's also really important to recognise that the stepping stones along the way are really important. So there are some things in politics which, I'd like to have done and I haven't, but I've probably been 98% there. It's just that final bit that maybe hasn't gone the way I wanted. So it's also recognising the really good things that you've learned along the way that, sport is winning and losing. For me, it was gold medal or nothing. But actually, it's a lot more complicated than that.
And the times you've lost allowed you and helped you to win in the future. So count those milestones, I suppose. Losing
a race in front of 80,000 people when it's live on TV is really miserable because people come and tell you, they're going to say, do you know, that was rubbish? You go, yeah, I was there. Thanks. Yeah, I know. But it makes you evaluate things in a different way. And I think what we did very well in our coaching group is we evaluated winning and losing. So although the medal was, the target was a gold medal and, my place on the team was based on a gold medal or nothing, that it is only gold medals that count on the scoreboard. We spent a lot of time, evaluating and learning from that process to all feed back into the next cycle that you work on.
I'm sure you've learned loads of different things in your life, but what do you think the most important thing you've learned in life? If there is one.
That's hard. I think the most important thing I've learned is it's okay to have a dream, and it's about the resilience. It's about being the best you can every day. And even when it's hard and it doesn't feel like it's working and you think, actually, I'm not sure I can do this, you keep going and you keep having another go to be the best you can. So in my career, I just wanted every race to be the best I could possibly be. And sometimes that brings medals and sometimes that doesn't bring medals. But it was knowing that there was nothing else I could do in that race to be the best. And if that's how I felt coming off the track, then that was a good place to be.
I'm a big fan of the word resilience and what it means. What does it mean to you?
Resilience means actually having quite a thick skin. Mm-hmm. I think because sport and my life in politics is quite public. So people will come and tell you what they think. whether you've had a good race, a bad race, what you've worn on TV, what your hair's like. And a lot of the time, they don't mean to be rude. They just care, because if you've been on TV or they've come to watch you race, they're part of that experience. So it's learning to deal with that. It's learning to deal with how people look at you and how people judge you. Because people make judgments on me because I'm in a wheelchair, because I'm a woman, because I'm Welsh, because I'm a mum, because I work in London but I live in the Northeast. And it's learning to deal with all those. And I think resilience is about being comfortable in your own skin, of just knowing that you're doing the best you can, that, you're working really hard, and that, you have this goal and dream, and that's what you're trying to achieve. Because when you look at other people's careers, you just always think they win, and it's all easy and it's lovely and they just turn up and they do it. And actually that's not for anybody. That's not how it is. It's hard, it's painful. You have moments of success, you have moments where you just think you can't do it. And actually that's the reality. And that's why you need to have that resilience and that belief in yourself.
That's brilliant, thank you. My last question to you, many, many, many years from now, what would you like your legacy to be?
If I could pick one thing that I could do in my parliamentary career, and it's really funny, it would be to stop people parking in blue badge spaces without a blue badge. And I've picked that because it's tangible, and you go to other countries around the world and it doesn't happen. And it's not about whether somebody parks in that space. It is about respect for disabled people. It's about disabled people are a full and included part of society. It's so nobody looks at somebody in a wheelchair and thinks, oh, they can't do that. It's they just look at them the same as everybody else. So that's top of my list of the things that I want to achieve.
Well done. Thank you so much. It was lovely meeting you, lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching Inspiring People. Thank you.
For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.